Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the state of Texas. I'll be doing a deep dive analysis on the state and talking about its potential to flip to Kamala Harris. Is there really a chance for it to go blue, or realistically, should we expect it to remain in the Donald Trump column potentially by a large margin? Now, before I get into this video, obviously, as I always say, please do like this video, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. That helps me out a lot. This video is actually suggested to me by a member, so no matter what level of membership you are, if you comment down, I will see you're a member because of a sticker next to your name, and whatever video you'd like me to do, I will give you priority. I will do that video within at least the next couple of days. So again, if you have a video you really want me to do, you being a member essentially guarantees it, obviously within reason. So thank you to the member who commented that, and we're going to get right into it. We're going to talk about the state of Texas and analyze this state's results. So, as we always do, I'd like to start in 2020, because this was obviously the most recent presidential election in Texas, and broadly, it was a pretty good one for Democrats. Now, Hillary Clinton lost the state by 10 points in 2016. Mitt Romney lost, Barack Obama lost it by 17 points in 2012. So it moved 7 points to the left in 2016. Then in 2020, it moved another, 4.5 points to the left, and Biden lost the state by around 5.5 points. Now, obviously, in terms of trends, this was a pretty fine result for Democrats. But compared to the polls, if you actually look at the Texas 2020 polls, Biden didn't do all that well. He was only down by a point on election day, and a lot of people had moved this race into the toss-up column. So Biden losing by 5.5 was actually kind of a disappointment for Democrats, especially because they hoped that his coattails would help them potentially in the Senate race or in a number of House races or even in the state legislature, and none of those things materialized. So 2020 was actually a pretty disappointing year for Democrats in Texas. And 2022 wasn't a disaster, but Democrats didn't really make any inroads either. So 2024, they're coming off two pretty underwhelming elections in a row, and they haven't had a lot of momentum in the state recently. And let's just kind of zoom out before I get into the specific geographical trends here. We have to remember that Texas is a state that is broadly left trending, but with a number of caveats. Obviously, geographically, this is the second biggest state. It's also the second biggest state by population. So it is massive, both in terms of the electorate and in terms of just the raw size of the state. So you have a lot of trends that are occurring at the same time. I often like to say that Texas is a left trending state, but under those left trends, under that umbrella, you have so many good trends for Republicans that are kind of overlooked, even though, again, as a whole, the state is, I would characterize as a Democratic trending state. So we have to consider all that when we look at Texas. We have to approach this with nuance. We have to approach this with a great deal of understanding that in some parts of the state, Republicans are going to do 20 points better. In other parts of the state, Democrats are going to improve by 15. And this is all in one state. So let's start with the Rio Grande Valley, which is easily the best part of the state for Republicans in terms of the future. And I'm going to kind of extend this to just the border counties as a whole. Actually, now that I think about it, the Rio Grande Valley is down here. It's in the southern part of the state, and then obviously you have more border counties that go up to the more northern or western part of the state, like up to El Paso. This is not part of the Rio Grande Valley, but it is obviously, in terms of trends, they're somewhat similar. So these are counties, especially along the border with Mexico, that are mostly Hispanic. You have some counties that are 95% Hispanic, and you have a number of pretty big cities. Obviously, El Paso is the biggest city on the border. You also have McAllen and Laredo. Laredo's in Webb County. McAllen is in Hidalgo County. And so Democrats have historically netted a lot of votes here. But in 2020, the effectiveness of this region was kind of, I don't want to say fully neutralized, but if you look at these swings on your map, these are huge red lines. And they were just fully, we saw Donald Trump make up a significant amount of ground here. And I don't like to think about votes contributing to a statewide total as a terms of, in terms of percentage. I like to think of them as raw votes because, again, it doesn't matter, right? Like, if you're a Republican running for statewide office in a made-up state, would you rather get 60% of the vote in a tiny county or 55% of the vote in a really big county? Obviously, you'd rather get 55% in a really big county because this isn't an electoral college system. What matters is actually how many votes you net out of a given area. And so even if you get a smaller percentage of the vote, if you're netting more votes just because the sheer magnitude of the electorate is bigger, that's what matters more. That's going to help you more. So Again, Joe Biden still won the Rio Grande Valley, but that didn't matter. That area still hurt him in 2020 because compared to Hillary Clinton in 2016 or Barack Obama in 2012, he did not net nearly as many votes as they did as a total, proportion of a statewide total. Biden did horrible compared to Clinton and Obama in the two previous elections. Again, we saw massive swings against him. And obviously some of these counties, right, like, Zapata County, which actually saw a 38-point swing to the GOP, obviously, that didn't have a huge impact on the statewide election. Biden lost by 200 votes, so it wasn't by any means like, didn't cost him statewide. But if you go to some of the bigger counties like Hidalgo County, which he still won, but again, Hidalgo County did move 23% to the right, and this is a relatively big county. So Biden netted almost 40,000 votes out of this county. If he'd won it by Hillary Clinton margin, he could have netted, 60, 65, 70,000 just off my, quick, back of napkin, just in my head as I'm speaking estimates. El Paso, similar. It was a bit better for Biden because it only trended 7.6% to Donald Trump. But again, he netted almost 100,000 votes out of this county. If it just stayed stable from 2016, he would have netted well over 100,000. And that's, at a certain point, that's kind of where you're getting into big margins statewide that can actually make an impact or make a dent into the GOP margin. So the question for 2024 becomes, can Kamala Harris improve in these counties? The polling actually does show her outrunning Joe Biden with Hispanic voters for 2024. If you look at the 2024 polls prior to Biden dropping out, he was actually only winning Hispanic voters by 9 to 10% on average nationwide in the final month and a half of polls conducted before he dropped out, per my calculations. Kamala Harris, that number, I don't know what it is exactly, but it's definitely at least in the 20s or at a very minimum in the high teens. So she's, excuse me, I just dropped my pen. She is, more than double his support or his margin of support among Hispanic voters in the polls. Now, a 20-point, let's just say Harris is up by 20 right now and Biden was up by 9 or 10. That's still not a great performance for a Democrat nationally with Hispanic voters. Pew Research actually estimated that Joe Biden won Hispanic voters in 2020 by, I believe, 24%. I could be wrong, but it's somewhere in the low to mid 20s. So let's say Biden won Hispanic voters by 2020 by 24%, and then Kamala Harris is winning them by 20. That's still a bad result for her because she still is doing worse than Biden, who did worse than Hillary Clinton, and obviously Biden also did worse than Barack Obama 2012. So that's the important thing to consider, is that in these polls, even though Kamala Harris does better than Joe Biden, she's not actually achieving the margins that you normally expect from a Democrat who does well with Hispanic voters. Now, there's reason to believe that Democrats will outperform their polls with Hispanic voters. They did in 2022 in every state except for Florida. But on the other hand, Donald Trump did very well with Hispanic voters in 2020. They have been a broadly right-trending demographic for the past 6 to 8 years. Really, since 2016, Democrats have actually gotten worse margins with their, worse national margins with Hispanic voters. And they did this in 2022, 2020, and 2018. So that's obviously a problem for the party. So my broad thoughts on the Rio Grande Valley is that I do expect it to move towards Trump again. We're not going to see the same swings we saw in 2020 because, again, let's just say we had like another 30, 35 point swing in all these counties, that would be insane. Then we would start to see Donald Trump actually winning, these Democratic urban counties. Not even, he flipped a few rural counties and he did better in some of these other rural counties. But if that swing repeats itself by the same percentage as what happened in 2020, he'd actually be winning like Hidalgo County. He'd actually be very close to winning, or actually he'd be narrowly ahead in Webb County. And those are, urban areas that are less susceptible to swings towards Republicans. So that's a really big problem the Democrats have, but I don't think it's going to, rear its head in the same form that we saw in 2020. But again, I'm not predicting Harris is going to get a very good. I'm not predicting Harris is going to get a very good result in the Rio Grande Valley. I'm just merely pointing out that I don't think the swing will be as big. But the good news for Democrats and for Kamala Harris is that to win Texas, she doesn't actually need to claw back in the Rio Grande Valley. What she really needs is to juice turnout and margins in the big three areas, which I lump San Antonio and Austin together. So you got this one area over here. You've got Houston. You've got Dallas, Fort Worth. So to start with San Antonio, Austin, this is a very good area for Democrats. If you look at the swings from 2016, we saw most of these counties did swing towards Joe Biden. Travis County, which is where Austin is, swung towards him by 6.5, and Williamson County, which is the suburbs of Austin, Biden won it by just a 1.5. It trended 11% towards him from 2016. So this is an area where Democrats actually did kind of perform relatively well in 2020. And Kamala Harris, if she's going to win Texas, she's going to have to win Williamson by 7 or 8. She's going to have to, probably get to 74, 75 in Travis County and really hope for, it doesn't even matter the percentage, what matters is turnout. And then obviously Bexar County, which is where San Antonio is, Biden actually only won the county by 18%. We actually saw a swing that was only a margin of, only around 4.8% towards the Democrats. So Harris should really be cracking 60 in Bexar if she has any chance at winning statewide. This is a mostly urban county. Democrats, I actually would argue, could do better here just to begin with, but they don't because the turnout among Republicans in the area is a lot higher than turnout among the Democrats in the area, and there's still a lot more room to be gained for Democrats. But regardless, that's kind of like the main idea. This is a progressive area. Austin's the most progressive city in Texas, arguably in the American South. And what you really have to think about here is, does Kamala, because turnout just broadly is expected to be down across the board. I don't think it's. I'm not by any means saying that 2024 is going to be a low turnout election, but the name of the game in terms of turnout is whose voters show up more, right? And obviously that that's kind of self-explanatory. But like, if both sides, and I think this is going to happen, by the way, both sides could potentially see turnout from their voters drop compared to 2020. Whichever side's turnout drops by less wins. That's the name of the game. And so if Republican turnout in the counties, an hour outside, in these deep red counties that are very small but, do combine to be, huge for the GOP, if these counties we see them, drop in turnout by 20%, while Travis and Williamson only drop by 7 or 8%, that could actually be a huge move. That could produce a huge movement towards Kamala Harris in Texas. And so is that going to happen? I'm not saying yes or no yet, but I am saying that that's, to me, the path for Kamala Harris is getting turnout from Democrats to fall by less than turnout from Republicans. And in a progressive area like Austin, if she can energize that young vote, that college vote, again, big university here, UT Austin, this is a huge campus, right? If she can motivate that, if she can get those voters out, she'll be able to hit her benchmarks here. But that's only, really a third of the game, because Harris County, which is, ironically named out, not named after Kamala Harris, but, her namesake, I guess you could say, has been disappointing for Democrats in recent years. In 2020, this county only got about a point bluer. And the problem the Democrats have here is that this is Houston. This is the 5th biggest city in the country. And Democrats can't even get 1 million votes in this county. This is a geographically large county. It's Houston, which is a geographically large city. It's a big city in terms of population, right? And Democrats here, like Philadelphia itself, which I believe is actually, I think Houston actually might be the 4th largest city in the country. But Philadelphia, again, this is a very small county in comparison to Harris County. But again, from Philadelphia and these 4 suburban counties outside of it, Democrats get well over 1 million votes. They actually get to 1 million, essentially when you just put Montgomery, Philadelphia, and even half of Delaware or Chester. And the fact that in Houston, which is look at just the size of this county, the fact that Democrats can't even get to 1 million there is a problem for them. And so it all comes down to vote nets. In 2020, Joe Biden lost Texas by let's see here. I'm just going to do my very, very rough estimate. I can't do math right now. He lost it by, let's see, 620,000. Yeah, somewhere in that range. I could be very wrong with that, but Biden lost Texas by 620,000 votes in 2020. And he netted 218K from Harris County. If Harris can net even 275K, that's like a big dent in the statewide margin for the GOP, especially if turnout goes down. Because if turnout goes down, the total number of votes you need to win the state obviously also goes down. So there's a lower, number you need to hit. So this is a problem for Democrats, and this is why they haven't actually been able to win Texas. It isn't because the Rio Grande Valley is shifting away from them, although it definitely hurts. It's because in Harris County, Houston, Democrats have not been able to get sufficient turnout ever. If Democrats in Harris County turned out the way, if Democrats could turn out their voters in Harris County the way they do in Philadelphia, in Madison, Wisconsin, and even Las Vegas to an extent, they'd actually be competitive in Texas, but they don't do that. Turnout in this county is bad, and that's the problem Democrats have. So, and again, there's not like I don't have a 6-step plan to get turnout up from that county. I'm not going to go to the Harris campaign and say, here, look, this is what needs to happen. Because the truth is, it's difficult, right? Like, knocking on doors, canvassing helps. But the problem Democrats have here is that they can't reach these voters because a lot of these voters who might not like Republicans don't like Democrats either. So that is the problem, and it's not an easy fix. So that's like the main reason that I think Texas isn't going to flip this year or isn't really going to come close to flipping this year is because we don't have any evidence that Kamala Harris is going to get these voters out. If she does, it's possible, but it's not something that I can predict 2 months out because it hasn't happened yet. I'll believe it when I see it. But until then, we know this is going to be a very, difficult task for Democrats. Now, the final area that I'm going to talk about here is Dallas-Fort Worth, which is obviously a very, very left-running area. It's probably the best part of Texas for Democrats long term. It's, you have 4 counties. You have Dallas, which is where the city of Dallas is. You've got Tarrant, which is where Fort Worth is. Then Denton and Collin, which I'm going to kind of refer to as, the same thing because these are both GOP-leaning suburbs that have been moving towards Democrats at light speed in the past decade. So Dallas itself, the county itself, only swung about 6% to the GOP in 2020. Or, only 6% to Biden in 2020. But he netted, almost 300,000 votes out of this county. And again, Dallas this county is a lot smaller geographically and population, wise than Harris. But again, Biden got, 2/3 the number of votes in Dallas as he did in Harris. So obviously turnout for Democrats in Dallas is a bit better than it is in Houston, even though it still could get better. So Dallas County, Biden did relatively well there. If Harris is going to win statewide, she has to definitely get at least 2/3 of the vote. If she got to 70, she'd probably actually be winning the state, but obviously that's a very tough lift for her because she'd need to do like 8 points better than Biden. But regardless, Dallas County, big one for Democrats. Tarrant County is interesting because it's kind of a swingy suburban bellwether county, but Biden only netted 2,000 votes here in 2020, right? So this didn't have a huge impact on the statewide vote because, again, if you're only netting 2K, it doesn't mean a lot. If Harris is going to win Texas, she'll probably need to net upwards of 10K out of this county, which, again, 10K in a state that in 2020 cast, let's see, at least 11 million votes, right? Like that's obviously not, enough to help you win, but it would be a good sign. Now, Collin and Denton were pretty big for Trump in 2020, not because he actually did all that well there, but just because they're still Republican-leaning. In Denton, he netted 34,000 votes, and Collin, he netted 22,000 votes, so together they netted him 57K. And that's, for 2 counties, that's not bad for a Republican because Republicans tend to get their vote nets not out of individual counties, but out of huge rural areas that are made up of 50 counties. And so, obviously, these counties did trend left in 2020. Biden did 12 points better than Clinton in both these counties. But realistically, if Harris is going to come close to winning Texas, she's going to have to flip these counties, right? Especially Collin County, which Biden only lost by 4 points in 2020. She's going to have to really neutralize these votes because these are still, counties that net Republicans a good number of votes. If Harris can actually neutralize that, if she can really tap into that, electorate and, tie or narrowly come out with victories in these counties, she's going to do well statewide. And so, for this is actually a path, right? These are counties that are, broadly socially liberal. And by socially liberal, I don't mean, potentially, being super progressive on, social issues. What I just mean is that they're broadly pro-choice. They're not opposed to gay marriage. And the voters who vote GOP, they're probably vote Republican, not because of social issues, potentially like the way they do in Tennessee or Kentucky or Southern Ohio. It's because of fiscal policy, maybe taxes, or because they don't like, budget plans of Democrats, or even some people just associate Democrats with higher taxes, whether that's right or wrong. But the thing here is that you have a lot of voters who actually agree with Democrats on social policy but don't vote for them. If Harris can convince these voters to vote on their social issues and not the fiscal issues, then she can actually come close to winning these counties or even win these counties, and that'll be huge for her. But again, if you made it this far in the video, you'll see that for every thing that can happen, there's a big if that comes before it, right? In the suburbs of Dallas, it's actually getting those voters to vote on their social issues and not fiscal issues. That's a huge ask because, oftentimes people are going to vote on the economy first before anything, right? In terms of Houston, it's about turnout, but Democrats haven't been able to turn out their voters in Houston in decades, right? And in Austin and San Antonio, it's also about turnout, but it's more about, because the cities actually do turn out relatively well for Democrats. It's more about them turning out more than the rural areas outside of, Boston or San Antonio, and that's what actually matters here. And so Democrats have a path to victory in Texas, but it's a very slim one. And it's one that I wouldn't bet on happening. I think Kamala Harris loses the state by 4 or 4.5 points come November, and I say that because, again, these are all what if scenarios. And Joe Biden was in the final polls in 2020. He actually was within a point or two in this state. He was close. He was within striking distance. But if you look at the polls now, Trump's up by 6. So the polls don't have it close. The Harris campaign doesn't really have a reason to go here or to invest here because there's not a Senate race or anything down ballot for Democrats to really focus on. So it just comes down to, does Kamala Harris actually think that she has a chance here? And I think the answer is no. And this is the right call. Maybe she'll do a point or so better than Biden, but realistically, with the amount of things that need to go right for her to win this state, Democrats are not likely to win Texas. Kamala Harris isn't likely to invest here for that reason. So those are my thoughts on Texas. I always like these kind of longer form deep dive videos where you look at the states. We really scrutinize the electorate here, and we talk about what needs to happen for something to happen. But I think this video, if you listen to it and if you thought of the things I said, I think you'll understand why it's so difficult for for Kamala Harris to lose Texas. Donald Trump, has done worse in the state than the previous Republican both times he's ran. But again, at the end of the day, this is still a state that he won by 600,000 votes in 2020. It's still a state where Democrats have a huge hill to climb, a number of hills to climb. And so at this point in time, I feel comfortable calling it a Republican-leaning state. So let me know what you all think. Excuse me. Let me know what you all think. Let me know what you want to see next, especially if you're a member. I will do your video. Comment down, again, what you want to see. And I will see you all tomorrow.